give you one of the latest 5G smartphones for a free phone now at T-Mobile.
What is it with guys that sit down and just spread their legs like they own the place? All I can say is this: their mothers and fathers didn't have a conversation with them. Universally, you hear about the common pet peeves that have to do with body language. Staring. What we call staring here in the United States may not be considered staring in other cultures. For instance, in New York City, we're allowed to stare at each other for about 1.28 seconds. That's been measured, been well studied. But in the Middle East, that may be extended to anywhere from 4 to 6 seconds. And so you have to realize this culture is very much dominant in how long we can look at each other. And not just that, but where we can look at each other. We say that in a business setting, you should be looking at this little triangle between the eyes down to the mouth. And in a social setting, that you can descend all the way down to below the chin. But certainly in a business setting, you are not permitted to go as low as the breast area. Also known as the second heart. When it squeezes, it's forcing blood up. This is beneficial for thinking because now you have both the real heart and the secondary heart both working together to force that blood upward. So there are actually some benefits to this, and a lot of creative people find themselves pacing because it contributes to that process. The bad handshake. The weak one, the wet one, the one where the person pulls you forward and pushes you back, the one where they feel they need to twist your hand jiu-jitsu style so their hand is on stop because they read this somewhere. Why do humans even shake hands? We shake the same level as the other person does. You do a quick shake and that's it. The close talk. All of us have different spatial needs. Now, some of it comes to us from culture. So New Yorkers will stand closer to each other than, let's say, someone from the Midwest. But it can also be personal. I come from a culture where we like to stand close together, but personally, I like to keep people 3 or 4 feet away. So one of the ways to avoid violating space, which makes people uncomfortable, causes psychological discomfort, is to, when you first shake hands, you reach in and you shake the hand. And rather than just remaining there, take a little step backward and assess what the other person does. And one of the things you'll find is if both of you take a step back, then both of you need that little bit of extra space. If the person moves towards you, then perhaps they come from a culture or they have a preference for standing closer. And in that case, what you may want to do is just angle your body a little bit so you don't feel like they're as close to you as they may be. Touch phobia. There's just some people that have this habit of they gotta touch. They gotta touch your arm, they gotta touch your shoulder as they're talking to you. They squeeze you to emphasize and so forth. And let's face it, some people just don't want to be touched. For some people, touching is comforting. It's how they make sure that someone is paying attention to them. It's what they use to emphasize, and it's very convenient. Obviously, if you grow up in a big family and you want to reach your brother and say, hey, I'm talking to you, you just have to remember that not everybody appreciates it. Man-spreading. Basically, you're entitled to the little area around you, your hips, plus about 1 to 2 inches on each side. And that's really by social convention what you're entitled to. Humans, by their very nature, when they feel strong, they feel confident, they tend to spread out. We're probably not even thinking that we're doing these behaviors, but we do them. The problem, of course, is when it infringes on other people. Verbal tics.